Jones. And here's a guy who knew Tommy better than anybody. He's a good friend of the channel, does a hell of a job. And he's Dick Stockton, his broadcast partner for a lot of those tremendous Celtic Laker runs. And Dick, nice enough to give us a couple minutes here today on a sad day in the world of sports. Dick, good to talk again. Christopher Russo, how are you? Okay?
Chris, it's always great to talk to you, but I got a little sidebar before we start talking about Tommy. Is that I just finished playing 9 holes with a great fan of yours his name is Rob Stearns, and he's the father of David Stearns, who you have interviewed before in your show.
Wow.
The general manager of the Brewers, and he's always been a great fan of yours, as I have been. And so I just wanted to throw that in before we get to the subject of the day.
Well, David Stearns lived in Queens, so Rob would he'd be on top of it. I do get Dave on, the general manager of the Brewers. Maybe he gets the Mets job.
Yeah.
Who knows? First off, you, Dick, let's talk about your busy schedule. You've stayed healthy. You've had to travel. Have you had any fear here about getting on the road and doing these games? Let me get a little sense on that from you personally first. Go ahead.
No, I actually, and thank you for asking that. I've not had any fear at all, and I've been tested. In fact, I have done 2 games that I wasn't supposed to do, that I was going to be off, because I don't work every week. I do about 9 games or so, which is what I want to do here. And because of problems of people not clearing, I've been called in at the 11th hour for 2 games to do, including last week when I did the Titans and the Bears. So I'm sorry that certain guys have had some problems, but I've been delighted to fill in, and I feel very good, to be honest with you.
So when you go, you have to get tested real quick. How do you do that if they call you on a Thursday to get to Nashville for the Bear Titan game? How does that work for you?
Well, we have a system of testing, and they get it done, and they get it done very efficiently, and they also have we have people on hand on site who will do it. In addition to that, if you need to be tested again, and so it works out pretty well, and that's just part of the game. Just part of the game.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, Tommy. I did a lot with him today as a player with the Jones and the Bob Bryant spot. You knew him better than anybody because you worked with him closely for a long period of time. Always just he's such a fun guy. He must have been a great guy to travel with. He's got that big, rough personality, and sit at a bar and play the piano all night. Must have been a lot of fun in the '80s there, Dick, with Tommy. Thoughts there for a sec. Go ahead.
He was one of the sweetest guys and the gentlest people that I've known in the world of sports. He was gruff. He had that voice. They had to push it up. I mean, that was his mantra every time we played. We had any game. He would always ask the coach, "How come you're not pushing the ball up enough?" Because that was his whole idea of successful basketball, and that's what he would judge coaches and teams' performance on, whether they pushed the ball up the court and forced the play. And so that was his thing. And he was so good as an analyst to see what was going on. Of course, he played, and I'm sure that a lot of the guys who you talk to, mentioned the fact that he was, he was the guy that Red Auerbach would get on. He was the guy that he would, because he knew he could handle it, so he could, make fun of Tommy. And Tommy could handle it. A great player, and he was a brilliant coach, great strategist, and a great partner for 4 years. I thought he was underrated. As a matter of fact, as a partner, I know all the years he worked with Mike Gorman, and still does with to an extent with Boston. But he was an underrated guy with me, and of all the years I did, I worked with Tommy more than any other analyst. I had Bill Russell, and then I had Tommy 1 year, Billy Cunningham, and then Hubie for the last 2 years.
Wow. Now he always used to get grief with the Laker fan that he was pro-Celtic, and then the Celtic fan would get annoyed that he's leaning too much the Laker way during those finals. Dick, how about that for a sec? Let me hear.
Well, you know why that was, and that's a great point. But the reason why that was because whenever we would do these games, and it's interesting that in the Lakers-Celtic era in the '80s, the series were exciting, but one team would impose its will on the other. There were very few down-to-the-wire games. I mean, we remember Magic Skyhook, and we remember certain kind of games, but basically one team would impose its will on the other and would win by as many as 25 points or 18 points and would win the game. And then the next game would be the other way around. And so what we would do in our broadcast is naturally, the way the game was going, they would come to us and we'd say, the Lakers are winning big. What do the Celtics need to do to get back in the game? Well, LA could care less what the Celtics needed to do. They didn't want to hear that, and vice versa. So they always thought that we were, favoring the other team, which was not the case.
Wow, fair enough. Wasn't there a broadcast once where he came on with a tie that had a purple and green tie to show you that that it was 50-50? Wasn't there a broadcast once where you started the broadcast with Tommy's tie? Dick.
Yeah, it didn't help. Let me just tell you, it didn't help. People, so this was the great story that I've never even told before. We would be in Los Angeles, and the Celtics would be playing the Lakers, and we get there on Friday, but Tommy would be doing a game Friday night at the Boston Garden. Well, up at the Forum Club in Los Angeles, which was the club above, at Inglewood, as you know, the Forum where the Lakers played, and the fans would be watching the game and would be listening to Tommy do the game. And of course, Tommy was, as trained by Red Auerbach, so pro-Celtic that he would, he would chastise the referees whenever they made a call against Boston. And the fans up there would be beside themselves. And now it's Sunday. He would fly in to do the game, and we'd be sitting there at courtside. And I forget the guy's name who was the PA announcer at the Forum. He was an FM disc jockey, and he had a great low-key voice. And he would say, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Forum. Yep. Celtics and the Lakers today. Calling the game for the LA Lakers, Chick Hearn." And everyone would cheer, And then they would announce Johnny Most, and there would be no reaction. And calling the game on CBS today, Dick Stockton and Tommy Heinsohn. Boo! The boos would come down from the top, and Tommy would say, "Dick, why are they booing? Why are they booing?" And could have been me, but I said, "Tommy," they all heard your broadcast from the Boston Garden on Friday night.
Where he was, and he used to get on the officials. Now I don't remember him doing it so much with you, Dick. Well, boy, oh boy, Tommy used to get on these officials left and right when he did the local broadcast all those years. Go ahead, let me hear.
He did. And the Celtics never got a good call. And they never got a good call, And but he was a delight, Chris, to work with. And at 4 years, we had 4 years together, and he was always serious and intense about how the game should be played. I mean, that was the biggest thing that he discussed about. He hated when teams walked the ball up the court. Couldn't stand it. And I remember one time we were in a playoff situation. The Celtics were playing the Atlanta Hawks. And Mike Fratello was coaching Atlanta. And we went to some high school. And that's where the game, the game was the next day. And we went to a high school where the Hawks would practice. And Tommy went up to Mike Fratello, and Tommy would tower over Mike, right? And he would say, "Mike, you're not pushing the ball up enough." Mike would say, I'm trying, Tommy. I'm trying to do it." "Well, you're not doing enough. You got to get the ball in Willis's hands." Willis has bad hands. He can't handle it.
And I knew Tommy used to hate the Hubie Brown games, the 86, 82 games. Those are not the famous games. Tommy wanted to score 120 to 115. And Hubie used to walk the ball up the court. He used to call him the Prussian coach. Didn't he used to call him the Prussian coach?
Oh.
He used to have a lot of problems with Hubie Brown. How about that for a sec? Go ahead.
And Rick Pitino was the same way, when he coached in the NBA, and Fratello was the same way. And they wanted to walk the ball up, and that basketball doesn't go anymore. And Tommy just couldn't stand it. In fact, he once said to me, we were in the beginning of our broadcasting career together, we'd be in a restaurant, and he would take out a napkin. He says, "You know what the best fast break is? A 6-on-5. I said, "Tommy, a 6-on-5, Tommy? This isn't hockey." And he said to me, "No." And he would talk about how they come down the court, and a player on the wing would then circle behind the basket and come out again as if he was an added man. And it would add to the fast break. He was ingenious. And he did that all the time when he coached the Celtics.
Yeah, he was, and he won the 2 championships, and he loved that push-him-up style, the offensive style. Now you were in Boston doing the Red Sox when he won the 2 titles, Dick. I'm sure you love basketball. I'm sure you went to the games and you knew him somewhat. In the 70s when he won the 2 championships, the Phoenix series and the Bucks series, you probably got good recollections of, correct?
Well, yes, and he was a truly great coach, and I was fortunate because in my career, the first baseball that I did in Boston was with Bob Cousy as the analyst, and then later on I would be working. Besides. I would be working besides the games on HBO, and I had Red Auerbach and Casey Jones. Okay.
Wow.
I had Red Auerbach and Casey Jones, and then later on I had Tommy and Bill Russell. So I had a lot of the guys that were on Boston Celtic. Wearing the green. So I had all that.
Who was his? I mean, do you remember who he loved as a player? Did he love Bird? Did he love Magic? Did he love Wilt? Who did he love as a player? Who did he tell you? He loved Elijah Wan. What players did Tommy love? He ever tell you those things during all those games?
He loved Havlicek. Havlicek was his pet.
Oh, it was. I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Havlicek was to him the best of all time. So that's who he liked, and he respected all those other players and his teammates, and it was great. So he came from that fabric of the Boston Celtics, and it was a certain kind. They won 11 championships in 13 years, and and I know there were only 8 teams in the league at the time, but he was phenomenal and a great player out of Holy Cross, and a tremendous competitor, and a great shooter, and a great coach and a great broadcaster. So I mean, it's a triple crown of basketball life.
And I didn't realize he was such a great artist. Bob Ryan told me today he was a tremendous painter. Did you know that? I'm sure you knew that, right, Dick, in the 80s?
Yes, I did. Oh, I did. And he showed us paintings that he had done. And, so it was, he was a versatile guy. And he was a happy in his skin. He was happy in his skin. And, nothing but great respect for him. And I feel sad. But, he had a tremendous life. And, the interesting thing, too, is that he would eat the wrong foods. I mean, he would eat the worst foods in the world. He would have bacon and eggs for breakfast. He would have a cheeseburger and French fries for lunch. And he would have onion rings and a steak for dinner. And people say, Tommy, you're not going to live long, eating like that. Well, look at the result.
And I thought he smoked like a fiend. So here's a guy that smoked like a fish. And he's eating all this crazy food, and he lives 86 years. We all could be so lucky. I think he lived 86 years of age.
I know. He had the genes and whatever he had. It was a pleasure.
Good, Dick. You did a wonderful job. Stay healthy. We'll catch you on the road here at these NFL games. Thanks for a few minutes here today. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Dick Stockton on Tommy Heinsohn. How about a bacon, eggs, cheeseburger, and steak and onion rings? Wow, we got a little Tommy Heinsohn today.